Hello, everyone. Oh, I was making sure that I had all of my links ready and available for you guys, and I forgot to put my mic in front of me. Of course. That's what I get for trying to actually be prepared today. Though it says no one's here yet, so I'll wait a minute here. I did see that way before we went live, there was a super chat that came in from Dale Snyder. So thank you, Dale. We'll wait a few minutes here, or a few seconds rather, I should say. Waiting for things to catch up. And they're not catching up. But, well, I see there's people in the chat. So YouTube says that no one's here yet, but I can see you guys, so whatever. We'll just go with it. All right, so Trashman says, live from the white-tailed deer state, it's the lady the House wants to impeach. Oh. The Senate wants to convict, and the National Guard just wants her to get them out of the parking garage. And with that, here's Dolly. I heard about that parking garage situation. And as a result, a lot of these states have pulled back their National Guard troops. I know Florida did. Virginia, I think Maine might have been another one. There was a few different states that they pulled back their National Guard troops because they were having to hang out in a parking garage with, as I understand from the Washington Post, one porta potty that was overflowing onto the sidewalk. Like, that's pretty disgusting. But let's see. I will see who in the gang is here. Let's try to get that scrolled all the way down. All right, so let's see who we have in the house. We have Babs the Ice Queen. Nomad is in. Toby Sear, Jesse Meek, Lone Wolf, Fish and Golf and Guns, JL, SHQ is in. Cap and Mac, Tennessee Beowulf, Iron Daisies, Robert Graham, John Sparks, David Dole, To a Metalhead, The Lost One, Matt Anemo, Exhale, John Morgan, Rose Blight, Great Sky Troll, Anti-Drama. I feel like that's a little bit of an oxymoron. Ta-da! Douglas from PA. Oh, goodness. Erishian Graham? Not really sure how to say that. Jacob Borum, Tony, Cap and Mac. I already said. Full Clip 69. Millwright Prepper, John D, Cody M, Saul Rise, Rosani Rodriguez, Astro Guy, Talisman, Coach Blackpill, David Neal, Peyton Taylor, Heathen Motorsports, Squid Monkey, Fine Ape is in. Dumpster Art, Mr. Rover Pilot, a whole bunch of folks in. And then I saw we had some Facebook folks in the house as well. We have Tony Lesser. We have another Tony Perales. We've got, let's see, Mark Miss Swain doubling up here. I know there's a Kimberly Fuller Karkovich. Yes, says that Florida is one of the states that pulled back their troops. All right, well, I already see that we got some super chats, so we'll read the super chats, and then we'll dive right in. I'm going to see, I wanted to get all my links and everything put together ahead of time because I want to see if I can try to be organized enough to take this stream after the fact and try to cut it up into some little segments, maybe. We'll see how I do. I might, it'll require me rewatching my work, which I never do. And I might rewatch it and decide that I did a terrible job and not do it, but we'll see. Francis Smith says, you the best. No, you guys are the best because I wouldn't do this if it weren't for you. James Jones asks how I am this fine evening. I am actually very, very tired tonight. But I've had a busy last few days. Jesse Meek says, BS, YouTube is screwing with you. At the time you said no one was here, you had 80 of us talking our ears off. Yeah, see, I can see that there are chats that come in, but I don't know. Tommy Walker says that Montana pulled their guard back as well. Robbie Rutherford is in and says, hello, Dolly. All right. Oh, and Dale Snyder, exclamation point. Thank you. I believe that we got all of those chats. So, and Morgan H says, love the shirt. This was, this might have been off of TeePublic. It was, I bought my husband a bunch of shirts for Christmas, and I got a couple for myself as well. So I think it came off of TeePublic. I thought it was pretty cool because it's pirates, but then also he's got a little AR. Pretty cute. All right. Well, so this week, Biden is the official president. He went through his inauguration. Things are getting pretty crazy already. Some of the media coverage of all of this was just downright gross. Let me pull up some of the links here. Where'd that window go? That is not the right window. Oh man, I tried to find all of these ahead of time. And I did. Which window is it? Where did it go? There we go. So, we all know that the media loves to hate Trump. And some folks have wondered, well, what will all of these people do now that they don't have Trump to blame for everything and Trump to occupy all this free rental space in their head? Well, I guess the answer is they're just going to go around and talk about Biden like he's the brand new messiah and just cry their eyes out. And this article particularly really got me from the Daily Mail, and I was pleasantly surprised by it. Who is American media's biggest Biden suck-up? Rachel Maddow cries on air, Al Roker fist bumps the president, and CNN guy claims mall fireworks will make our enemies tremble. I've also been seeing a lot of Twitter feeds talking about things like, I had all this anxiety for years and years and years, 4 years of living in anxiety and barely being able to breathe. And now I have a sigh of relief. There was some guy that talked about how he was like out walking his dog or something and just found himself crying at the wonder of Joe Biden and how Joe Biden will save us all. There's been memes going around of artwork. I posted one of them on Twitter today that shows like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris hugging in happiness, and there's all these people up in the clouds looking down at them and smiling. And there's been artwork that I've seen coming out of literally Joe Biden with wings. And the thing is just like 2 weeks ago, the media was making fun of like the QAnon folks for saying like, oh, Trump is a messiah, but they're treating Biden in such like religious reverence. They're idolizing him, and it's really, really creepy. And there's a really big difference, I think, personally, at least between like everyday people. If they want to think that Trump is a messiah, all right, fine. You know, it's they're not hurting anybody by doing that and having those beliefs. But when the media is propagating this idea and just spitting it out to the masses, there are so many people that the only information they ever get about what is happening in the world around them is from these cable news programs. Your Stephen Colbert's and John Oliver's and Rachel Maddow's and whoever else. That's the only information they get about what is happening outside of the bubble of their house. So it's a really big difference when the media is putting out this messaging about this almost religious experience of the inauguration of Joe Biden versus when there's some, rando QAnon supporters on 4chan talking about how Trump is a messiah that's going to save us from all the diddlers or something. Very big difference. But so the Daily Mail came right out and called it like it is and talked about how the mainstream media was just gushing and fawning over Joe Biden. And this is a great article too, because it puts together all the clips here. Quite excellent, actually. So I'm going to play this for you guys because I just think it's hilarious, this little mashup that we've got here.
Let me get your reaction. First, I went through half a box of Kleenex, but I made sure that I saved one in case you said anything that was also going to make me cry, because at this point, I'm just a faucet that can't turn off.
No, I'll tell you, I was mostly dancing around and singing along to the extent that I could, that I could keep up with the lyrics.
Jen Psaki. Jen, thank you so much
White House press
for
secretary.
being with us. I must say we were all disappointed that there were not overhead photos of crowd sizes and everything.
Now, today's inauguration felt more like a church service, right? I mean, and we see there that, like after a good sermon, the congregation doesn't want to go home, right? People are still hugging, shaking hands. And I thought from Joe Biden today, certainly he was commander-in-chief, but was also papa-in-chief. He gave a speech to comfort the nation.
What we've been through throughout 4 years of the Trump presidency, and the contrast on display tonight was so stark. I mean, those lights that are just shooting out from the Lincoln Memorial along the reflecting pool. It's like almost extensions of Joe Biden's arms embracing America.
Yeah, I think his inaugural address was spectacular today, and it was just what the country needed. We're a country that has been wounded by rancor and division and now an insurrection, and his speech was like a soothing balm for those wounds. He said, let's start afresh, let's listen to each other. He reached out with an olive branch directly to Trump supporters.
I mean, I don't know if we can really say that he reached out with an olive branch to Trump supporters, but we'll get to that one in a minute. What really got me was this guy talking about Joe Biden's outstretched arms hugging the country. Absolute ridiculous. And we have Al Roker here giving a fist bump to Biden, not doing social distancing, all of that fun stuff. Absolutely ridiculous. We had this guy talking about it was a religious experience. And then I guess it turns out that his press secretary used to work for CNN and was given only softball questions so far in her first few days. And then we had this tweet. So this team truly understands optics. These images will inspire our friends and shake our foes, because fireworks are absolutely terrifying, I guess, and are gonna scare away Russia and China. I don't know. I'd like to say, what are these people thinking? I really wonder, do they actually believe this stuff that they're saying, or is it just, I don't know, are they just doing it for the propaganda machine, or do they actually believe this crap? That's what I would want to know, and I don't think we'll ever really know. And, people talking about how, now there's going to be a daily White House briefing, and what a change. First non-weird White House press secretary in 4 years. I mean, I don't know. I really like Sean Spicer. I thought he was a funny guy. I don't think he was funny on purpose, but I thought dude was hilarious. Jim Acosta, exactly 4 years ago, people tend to remember only Spicer's obvious lie that Trump had the biggest inaugural crowd size, but it was also the day Trump administration began attacking members of the press from the White House briefing room. It is a good question of who was the biggest American media suck-up. Maybe someone should create a poll and we should do some votes for it. But it's so they were talking about how this is a big change, and now there's going to be peace and unity. I don't know, just big talking points, and how there was that one guy who said that Biden's inaugural address was like a solve to the burns of the Trump years or something like that. And oh, sorry, my dog is making noises. I didn't listen to the inauguration myself because, frankly, I didn't really want to listen to Joe Biden talking for 20 minutes. I did watch some of the videos that they had up on the White House YouTube channel, particularly the one that they forgot to turn comments on for a little while, because they've turned all the comments off on all the other videos on the White House channel. Which is interesting because when Trump was blocking people on Twitter, right, there was actually some legal proceedings around that said like, hey, Trump, you can't block people from responding to you. You can't block people from interacting with you, free speech, elected official, blah, 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 blah. So there's already a precedent for that. So I'm wondering how they are going to get away with blocking comments on the YouTube channel. There's also been some crazy ratios, like the president of the United States that supposedly got more votes than anyone else ever is getting ratioed hardcore over on YouTube. I'll actually pull that up. I haven't looked at it today to see, because I guess what they've been doing is they have been unlisting some of the videos, and then when they get relisted, the like and dislike ratios are different. I'm not going to play any of these. Oh, here we go. See, comments are turned off. 3.5 or 3.8 thousand dislikes to 661 likes. Some of these, I guess, actually have a 90% ratio of 90% dislikes versus likes. So this was the one. Oh, so this is the one where they didn't turn off the comments. I took a screenshot of this one earlier, just in case. Yeah, the like and dislike ratio is actually different because I disliked this video earlier and that dislike is gone. So that's interesting. None of these comments are good. There's no positive comments. I went scrolling through like 20 pages of these comments earlier, and there was like nothing positive for the supposed most popular president in history that got the most votes and the most voter turnout in history. People talking about Dr. Seuss needing to write his speeches. The slip that he made talking about America having the biggest voter fraud organization in the history of the country. People talking about how many jobs are already getting lost with some of the executive orders that he is signing. A pro-Trumper, the whole world is watching and laughing. Dislikes and comments are high, but the actual dislikes aren't adding up. Where my proud patriots at? Not many dead people hitting the like button today. Biden presidency is off to a great start. If the like to dislike ratio on all the videos is anything to go by, LOL. Everything is critical. This guy can't even speak properly, and you know he's reading off of a prompt. You campaigned on creating more jobs, that you erase 60,000 in one day. Step down, you tyrant. You can't delete the dislikes, YouTube, but you can delete the dislikes, but you can't delete the fact that Biden is a clown. I mean, you just keep going. None of these are pro-Biden comments. None of them. None of them at all. And yeah, I mean, you just go through and they are all like this. Oh, this one has comments too. But look at this. 900 likes versus over 4,000 dislikes. Everyone's getting their woke cookies, soggy prune cookies. People talking about the comments, the memes. Why weren't our soldiers taken better care of? Plot twist, kids used to call her corn pop. It's just video after video after video. It's just like this. Here we have another one, comments turned off. So they didn't get a chance to turn the comments off on the other ones yet, but 4,500 likes versus 11,000 dislikes. I mean, there's no way to hide this. They're going to try because, like I said, what they've been doing is they've been unlisting some of these videos. And then when they relist it, the likes to dislike ratio is different. But that's stuff that people have been catching. But so they've been talking about how his inauguration speech was this amazing unifying force that's, I don't know, going to suddenly make the world a better and more peaceful place. But that's not what is really happening in the background. I see that there are super chats coming in, so I will jump over to those real quick. And then I'll jump into the next topic here. I did not see that Biden had a fake photo op with the soldiers. I didn't hear that at all, but that would not surprise me. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. So I just opened the super chat window and did they delete a video? Because it's coming up with just like the gray square. Hold on 1 minute. I need to see if this is, I'm curious if this is just an error that's happening on YouTube or in the app or something, or if that's actually gone. Because that would be a curious thing. No, it's still there. Okay, that's weird. You never know with YouTube. They like to go back and delete things. There's actually, if you go into my playlists, when I look at them at least, on all of my playlists, it says that some videos are no longer on the playlist because they've been deleted by YouTube. I have no idea what videos those are because I've made so many. I never got any notification by YouTube of them deleting videos, but it says right on my playlist that some of the videos have been deleted by YouTube. So there we go. Let's see. Trashman says Bozo Joe is not my president. David Wrinkle, thank you for the donation. Thanks, Josh. What even is that? The little dude that's like spinning. Rose says Joe Cheater-in-Chief Biden as the Messiah is sacrilegious to most American Christians. Well, I mean, and the thing is too, even the language where they talked about how the Capitol is the most sacred ground in the U.S. No, it's not. That's really creepy language. And it brings to mind the libertarian motto, phrase, whatever, that statism is the most dangerous religion. And I actually posted about that on Twitter, and people, for whatever reason, thought that I was talking about Satanism. But no, statism is the most dangerous religion. And, you know, you can argue that there were all these wars fought about religion in the beginnings of civilization happening in the Middle East as well, modern day wars. But I mean, how many people have gone to war because, you know, their government was better, or, you know, how we go to embalm people to spread democracy, or, you know, because that country has oil, or they're not going to be taking US dollars anymore, or, you know, whatever reason. More people have died because of statism and their governments. I mean, if you look at, there's a term for it, democide, when governments kill their own people. And I mean, more people have died because of government than any of the more recent wars put together. But that's a total other topic. Dale Snyder says that he loves my lipstick. Thank you, Dale. Thank you, Jesse Sowell, for the little, I don't really get these stickers. They're like these little pears. I don't know. Superboss Giovanni says, and by attack members of the press, he means calling them on their bull crap. Right. I mean, the confidence in the press is at an all-time low. It's at a record low right now. Something like I saw the numbers recently. Only like 18% of Republicans trust the media and believe that the media is putting out unbiased information. Democrats had a far higher percentage. It was 52 or 59%. It was in the 50s, but still, I was like, wow, that's actually a lot lower than I would think. So that means that still most Republicans and a little less than half of Democrats don't trust legacy media and think that the media is biased and doesn't put out truthful information. So, I mean, you can argue. So some people like to argue that that's Trump's fault. It's a crusade that he started against the media. But that doesn't explain all of the Democrats and independents that also don't trust the media, because, I mean, obviously they weren't listening to Trump's claims about this stuff, right? So, you know, the media tries to cover their own asses by using that Trump story, but they can't account for all of these other people that aren't in the Trump camp that don't trust them either. So, you know, fake news. And thank you again, Dale and Baked Penguin. So let's start. Let's go to this whole thing about the unity that Joe Biden is spreading behind his barbed wire or razor wire fence and his 25,000 troops. And it came out today, by the way, that the deputy secretary for, I believe it was Homeland Security, was on Fox News recently and revealed that Nancy Pelosi requested crude machine guns at the inauguration for her protection. She literally wanted belt-fed machine guns up on the rooftops to protect her and the other politicians. AOC didn't even attend because she said that she still didn't feel safe around her Republican colleagues because she believes that they're plotting to kill her. And yet she wants to fund programs to deprogram conspiracy theorists. That video will be out this weekend. I'm going to try to get a video out as well about the Nancy Pelosi crap, because that's just absolutely ridiculous. So behind these requested belt-fed machine guns, behind the actual razor wire fence, the closed bridges, the barricaded off roads, and the 25 National Guard troops that are a complete overreaction, Joe Biden was talking about unity. But if you actually listened to his speech or read the transcript, which we have here, there's some pretty telling parts where, you know, he's talking about unity out of one side of his mouth and completely contradicting himself out of the other side. So I highlighted some parts of his inauguration speech that I thought were really primo here. So he's talking about here all of the things that America needs to overcome now. And he says, and now a rise in political extremism, white supremacy, domestic terrorism that we must confront and we will defeat. And then he says, oh, well, we need unity to overcome these challenges. Well, it turns out that it's not actually unity that he's going to be using to overcome those issues. And then he says, I know that speaking of unity can sound to some like a foolish fantasy. I know the forces that divide us are deep and they are real, but I also know they are not new. And he's right about that. Our history has been a constant struggle between the American ideal that we are all created equal and the harsh, ugly reality that racism, nativism, fear, and demonization have long torn us apart. Well, I think the actual struggle here is in America, this constant struggle, is the fact that America was founded not on slavery, as things like the 1619 Project would lead people to believe, but on the idea of a limited government. That is why, folks came here in the first place. for freedom, for liberty. And America was founded on those principles. The American government was founded on those principles of small, limited government that really isn't allowed to do much. And yet here now we have this cancerous growth of a state that is overreaching into pretty much every aspect of people's lives. And unfortunately, what happened on January 6th is going to make that way, way worse. And it's already being used as an excuse to extend that reach and that grip that government has over our lives and get its fingers in even deeper to the areas that it's already in. He says politics need not be a raging fire destroying everything in its path, which is probably not the best word choice. It's pretty ironic word choice, actually, considering all of the riots and looting and things that got set on fire over the summer, including police stations and government buildings. I mean, hey, go for the government buildings. I don't care. At least that's the right target. But all the businesses that were burned down, raging fire, destroying everything in its path, probably not the best choice of words here. He says every disagreement doesn't have to be a cause for total war, and we must reject a culture in which facts themselves are manipulated and even manufactured, which is really ironic coming from someone on the left. I don't really know how left Joe Biden really is, but he claims to be on the left. And he panders to the likes of BLM, and he was pandering until to Antifa and using them basically as useful idiots. And that's not so much the case anymore. He also has flat out rejected all of BLM's calls for meetings and policy changes and things like that. So he was definitely using some of the people on the far left to make Trump look bad and using them to his advantage. And now he's kind of just thrown them out. But I mean, everything that has gone on for the last 4 years, the Russia, the constant disparaging of Trump supporters as only being white supremacists and racists. Don Lemon on, I believe he's on CNN, equated every Trump voter to the KKK. And yet they say, well, we need to reject a culture in which facts are manipulated and manufactured. I don't know what can really be more manipulated and manufactured by turning 74 million voters into supposed racists and Nazis by the new leftist definition. And then he talks how we have to be different than all of this. But Joe Biden is not different because he's a politician, and for the most part, they are pretty much all the same. He says the right to dissent peaceably within the guardrails of our republic is perhaps the nation's greatest strength. Yet hear me clearly. Disagreement must not lead to disunion, and I pledge this to you. I will be a president for all Americans. I will fight as hard for those who did not support me as for those who did. And yet, we have all of these members of Congress and the media and, you know, little folks on social media, the blue checks, saying how we need a list of Trump supporters so we can root them out and make sure that they lose their jobs and understand the errors of their ways, that anyone who questioned the election or talked about election fraud needs to be forcibly ejected from Congress. We have folks talking about how if Joe Biden really wanted unity, he would lynch Mike Pence. I mean, the irony here, the hypocrisy, they cannot see their own hypocrisy. And I mean, because it is so obvious, that's what leads me to question over and over and over again, like, do they believe the crap that they're saying? Or are they just doing it to fuel the machine of government to get more and more power? Might be a little bit of column A, column B. Sometimes I think the only person in Congress that believes what they're actually saying, aside from the folks in like the Freedom Caucus, is like Bernie Sanders. Because, I mean, he seems nutty enough that he would actually believe the drivel that he talks about. So Biden continued, but the answer is not to turn inward, to retreat into competing factions. A little late for that. Distrusting those who don't look like you do, or worship the way you do, or don't get their news from the same sources you do. But CNN can talk about how we need to completely dismantle conservative media. All of Fox News, that's the only conservative media there is out there as far as legacy media is concerned, but we need to get rid of them. And CNN is also making calls now to get rid of conservatives on YouTube in general, because they're competing too much with CNN and NBC and ABC and all of those outlets. So, I mean, just, it's so ironic, his speech. He says, we must end this uncivil war that pits red against blue, rural versus urban, conservative versus liberal. We can do this if we open our souls instead of hardening our hearts, if we show a little tolerance and unity, if we're willing to stand in the other person's shoes just for a moment. We are way, way past that point of anyone being able to take perspective. That is what has gotten us into this predicament. And it was the left's and the media's constant insults of anyone who wasn't on the left, and their constant pushing of this like Russia conspiracy thing, and, you know, Trump peeing on prostitutes, and, you know, blah, 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 blah. I mean, granted, the issue started long before then. I think the issue really started in the Obama years, maybe even in the Bush years, because in Bush's term, it was the whole, like, if you're not with us, then you're against us. But Obama really, really ramped up that rhetoric. And then the left just took it and ran with it after Trump got into office. And now here we are, and we are way past the point of no return. I think for simple, like, oh, let's just take a moment and have some perspective. Because the thing is each side thinks that the other side has no perspective and can't understand each other. And then the way that they yell and scream at each other and bash heads, like, completely confirms that. And it just spirals around and around and around. But I mean, you can go up to any rando conservative on the street and ask them, you know, what is the left thinking when they do X, Y, and Z? The conservative will be able to tell you what the liberal is thinking and what their ideas and platitudes are behind it. You ask that same question of a liberal, they have no idea. Absolutely no idea. It's kind of funny, actually. But so, and then he says that, you know, we have to immediately tackle all of these crises that we face. So how is he going to tackle some of these crises? Well, you see, John Brennan went on MSNBC this week, and he's the former CIA director, and he has it in with the intelligence community. And he had some interesting things to say about how Biden's administration is going to be tackling some of these problems.
Well, Nicole, I was thinking today that this is the most relaxed I've been in the course of many inaugurations I've watched, because I'm not responsible for it. But I can tell you that when I was in the government, I had white knuckles because of the nature of the threats. But it's so much more difficult today because of what we have seen, not just over the last 2 weeks, but that certainly has riveted our attention, but because of this growth in polarization in the United States and domestic violence and white supremacist groups. So I know, looking forward, that the members of the Biden team who have been nominated or have been appointed are now moving in laser-like fashion to try to uncover as much as they can about what looks very similar to insurgency movements that we've seen overseas, where they germinate in different parts of the country and they gain strength, and it brings together an unholy alliance frequently of religious extremists, authoritarians, fascists, bigots, racists, nativists, even libertarians. And unfortunately, I think there has been this momentum that has been generated as a result of, unfortunately, the demagogic rhetoric of people that's just departed government, but also those who continue in the halls of Congress. And so I really do think that the law enforcement, Homeland Security, intelligence, and even the defense officials are doing everything possible to root out what seems to be a very, very serious and insidious threat to our democracy and our republic.
I want to read you.
Yes, because libertarians that just want to be left alone and to do their own thing and believe in the non-aggression principle and only use aggression in terms of self-defense are an insidious threat to our democracy and are inherently violent and dangerous. There are so many things wrong with this clip that I don't even know where to start. I mean, first of all, his inclusion, he used the word nativists, and Joe Biden used that word as well. And to my knowledge, the word nativist, I mean, first of all, it shouldn't even be an ism, but it's just sort of this idea of putting America first, right? And that people who are Americans should have their rights and be served by their government before other people elsewhere. I mean, that's my understanding of it. People are telling me to hydrate. So that right there sets a really dangerous precedent that people who say America first, which, I mean, if we're going to be extending this danger to democracy all the way to libertarians, well, then you could argue that they used to call like Ron Paul an isolationist, for example, when really it's just he's a non-interventionist, I suppose you could say, where he doesn't believe in just starting foreign wars over oil or gold or what have you. He says that we shouldn't be the policemen of the world. So, I mean, if we're saying, okay, anyone who believes America should come first is also part of this danger to democracy, and we're going to extend that to libertarians, well, then that could even count like the non-interventionists and isolationists and all of that. But I mean, what he's talking about, he says that we have seen these things happen in other countries, and he's absolutely right. I have had conversations with folks and seen conversations also on Twitter and Facebook of people who live in other countries or have come here from other countries where things like this have happened, and a lot of times it was helped along by the CIA. It happens. It's a thing. There are unclassified documents about it or declassified documents. You can check it out. The CIA gets involved and meddles all over the place, creating government instability all over the place. And in some of these places, they call it the color wars, where, like one color gets pitted against the other. And other governments are like almost always involved in crap like that. And they have said, I have heard from several people now that the situation that's in the US right now is very, very similar to these color wars that they've had in other countries. So when he says that these insurgencies and things like this have been happening elsewhere, and we've seen it happen there, like, he's not wrong. But what he is talking about now is taking the machine that we use for the war on terror overseas and taking that machine and turning it towards Americans. He's talking about mass surveillance. He's talking about all kinds of crackdowns. He's talking about a massive extension of the police state. And we already live in a police state, but he's talking about massively extending that in the name of coming after insurgents who he's now lumping libertarians in with. Like, libertarians, that's a political party. So he's talking about using the war on terror machine to come after members of a specific political party right here, on American soil. And there are some folks that have had a problem with this. Rand Paul is one of them. And right now, if you go on Twitter and you do a search for Rand Paul, right? So Rand Paul, what he had to say about this and about Joe Biden's speech was, he said this on Fox News. If you read his speech and listen to it carefully, much of it is thinly veiled innuendo, calling us white supremacists, calling us racists, calling us every name in the book, calling us people who don't tell the truth. And he's absolutely right. That was the core of Biden's speech. Like, it sounded all nice and flowery and fluffy to the people on the left at face value. But if you really look at it, it's a threat that, we are coming for you. We're going to force this unity idea, and anyone outside of our prevailing political thought is going to be annihilated so that we can have this peaceful unification or some crap. So Rand Paul spoke out against it. And so on Twitter right now, it's just, Rand Paul calls out white supremacists, and if a speech calls out white supremacists and you think that's you, well, Rand Paul, that sounds like a you problem. It's all these people saying, Rand Paul is offended because he knew that Joe Biden was talking about him. If you're offended by Joe Biden's speech, well, that must mean that you are a white supremacist or a Nazi. This woman here, this is quite the self-own, Rand Paul. People who aren't racists, liars, or white supremacists do not draw this line from themselves to these words. Another one, Rand Paul getting offended by calling a white supremacist tells me everything I need to know. And that's everything. Everything. If you just scroll through after searching Rand Paul on Twitter, that's all that you get. And there's even people bringing up the fact of like the anti-lynching bill that he opposed and different bills that he's opposed in his tenure in Congress, thinking that opposing those bills makes him a white supremacist, when in reality, dude opposes pretty much every bill that would require more government spending or government overreach or anything that goes outside of the confines of the Constitution. He votes down laws or bills all of the time just based on that. So it's just willful ignorance on that part, complete and total willful ignorance. And it's just absolutely ridiculous. And I mean, we're already seeing an example of that here. So here's this article from Business Insider. So if you weren't aware, first reported, by Jack Posobiec. I don't really know if that's how you say his name correctly, but he reported back on January 18th on Twitter. He said, "Good morning. The DoD is vetting soldiers for dangerous conservative sentiments, and NBC is encouraging the FBI to spy on conservative groups." And that is true. What happened is that the DoD literally was going through the troops that were stationed in DC and going through, talking to them and going through their social media accounts, their Facebooks, their Instagrams, their Twitters, all of that. And they were searching for anything that they could deem as extremist content or white supremacy content or whatever else. But also among those things, they were rooting out for mentions of like QAnon or Trump support. But the most insidious of all of that, they were looking for anyone who had ties to the NRA, who posted about the NRA, who liked the NRA, who had pictures where they were wearing NRA gear. They also went after anyone who had a Gadsden flag in any of their pictures. That is ridiculous. Like, you cannot equate. Well, I mean, I suppose you can if you're the left or Moms Demand Action or David Hogg or whatever. But I mean, in like the real world of logic and rationality and intellect, you cannot equate the NRA with white supremacy. If you've put any study into this or time to research, gun control was a very racist policy. It was meant to keep guns out of the hands of Black people. And in fact, now gun control mostly just takes guns out of the hands of poor people, especially in urban areas that have high crime, where they would be the people that could most benefit from self-defense. The NRA is simply, as flawed as it is, we all know how I feel about Wayne LaPierre, but the NRA is, at its core, a civil rights organization for a right that is, number one, a natural right, the ability to defend yourself against criminals or whoever and your government, number one. But number two, is also embedded in the Constitution. That's all that the NRA is. It's there to help protect a constitutional right. And yet they said, okay, any of these soldiers that like the NRA or have a Gadsden flag anywhere, which is a symbol of the American Revolution, gone. And in fact, they did take 12 people and took them out of the Capitol and reassigned them. Because it was suspected that if they were members of the NRA or liked the NRA or had Gadsden flags, that automatically meant that they were part of far-right groups. Because, apparently that means that they're a threat to the presidency. So here we go. A total of 12 National Guard troops were pulled off of the inauguration security mission, the Pentagon said Tuesday, confirming reporting from the Associated Press. 2 Guard members were found to have suspected ties to far-right militia groups, Army and intelligence officials told the AP. You know who else did loyalty reviews of government officials and troops? The folks during the Red Scare McCarthy era. McCarthyism was a bad thing. And between what AOC is talking about, this vetting of troops, cancel culture, all of that, we are having a total rebirth of McCarthyism, except it's after, instead of the red of communism, it's going after the red of conservatism. It's absolutely terrifying. So we have here confirmed that the military and the FBI are vetting troops deployed to the nation's capital. So they don't say here, they do. These 2 members who were found to have suspected ties to far-right militias. And really, how can you say, there are far-right militias, but you can't say that just because someone is in a militia, that means that they're far-right. Trashman says, is anyone else disturbed that they only found 12? So, without going into detail, the Pentagon said they were taken offline for inappropriate texts and comments. Defense officials added that not all of the 12 removed from the security mission were pulled for questionable ties or extremist views. But then, why were they pulled? It says, the title of the article is that they were pulled off of security over concerns, including suspected ties to far-right groups. So that means for inappropriate texts and comments. So that's not just social media. They were going through their phones, which is really, really creepy. So they said, we work closely with law enforcement, and if there's any identification or anything whatsoever that needs to be looked into out of an abundance of caution, we automatically pull those personnel off the line and make sure they're not part of the mission set. And in certain cases, we make sure to get them sent home, said the National Guard Bureau Chief during the Pentagon press briefing. So we don't actually know what it was that was said specifically to get those people off of that assignment, but I have read elsewhere that the criteria that they were using were Gadsden flags and the NRA, and then, whatever other, references to Proud Boys or sympathizing with them, whatever. But we are vetting our troops now, like McCarthy, apparently. That is just the thing that's happening. So I see a lot of super chats have come in. So I'm going to refresh and get to those. So let's see. Where did I leave off? Q says, reminds me of the female Ghostbusters remake preview video. YouTube fought hard to hide how much people hated that one. And who was it that got booted for that? Was that Milo that got booted for the Ghostbusters thing, the female Ghostbusters thing? Someone was. Who was it? I know one of you guys know. When people in the comments are saying in regards to that stuff with like the troops and whatnot, that they say there's an armed American behind every blade of grass. Absolutely. And yet they're going to vet people for owning guns when it's estimated that, well, so before even the whole COVID pandemic and riots and everything that bumped up this huge historic increase in gun sales and new gun owners, before all of that, they were estimating, I saw a few studies that estimated that 22% of Americans owned guns, which incidentally enough is like, they said that it was like 72 or 74 million, which is about the number that voted for Trump, interestingly enough. And that was before COVID and the riots and the looting and all of that. So, I mean, what, do they really think that 22% of America is part of a far-right militia, or is, you know, a dangerous far-right group just because they happen to own a gun? It was something like there was a good amount of Democrats in those studies as well, Democrats and independents, that said that they were also gun owners. So how do you explain, you know, if all gun owners are these dangerous militia members, how do you explain the ones that consider themselves to be Democrats and vote for the Democratic Party? Doesn't make sense. Yes, people are confirming that it was Milo that was booted over Ghostbusters. Oh, goodness. Let's see. Christoph says that dangerous liberty must be terroristical. Rose says, the last time I saw YouTube delete dislikes, comments, etc., like on Biden's video, was when Blizzard came out with Diablo Immortal. Oh, I vaguely remember that. I don't remember what the controversy was, because I don't play Diablo, so I don't really know what the deal with that was. But I remember that was a thing where they were kept changing the like and dislike ratios. Christoph says that statism is a product of the axial age. I don't know what you mean by the axial age, like an axle, like on a car or a wagon. I actually, if any of you folks are interested in a really good documentary, I didn't finish it yet, but I was watching it on Amazon Prime last night, and it's amazing that it even made it to Amazon Prime, but it's called Monopoly on Violence, and it has like Judge Napolitano in it, it has Jeff Deist, it has Tom Woods is in it. It was actually pretty cool. I was like watching it and I was like, hey, every time someone popped up that's actually in my Facebook friends list, that I thought that was pretty cool. But in that documentary, they talk about like the history of the state, and they talk about like early states, like in Egypt and stuff like that, but how the modern iteration of the state in the way that it had this drastic control over people's lives, they quantify it by like, okay, when did like mass taxation really start? And they said that really the modern day state as we know it didn't really start until like the 1600s in Europe. And I thought that that was really interesting, but it's a really great documentary. I recommend anyone who is interested in libertarianism, voluntarism, anarcho-capitalism, whether you're big L, little l, whatever, even if you're just interested in how the libertarian thought came to be, it's really interesting. They go through even the earliest philosophers and where some of that stuff came from, going all the way back to Stoicism. Really cool stuff. Really interesting. It actually inspired me that I think maybe once we get the new house, because we did finally get our pre-approval letter and everything is getting set up, I might, instead of having my background, because I'll actually have like a nice wall to sit in front of, I think I might actually get some bookshelves and just put it on like all these like history books and liberty books and philosophy books and things like that. It'll be kind of like Easter eggs for folks. And then that means that I get to business expense all the books that I want to read. And I'll be able to put my YouTube play button on the wall and my like honorary disc golf disc from when I got my play button. Anyways. Bruce the Boss Brooks says Congress is now seeking an FBI probe into Parler, its connection to Russia, and role in Capitol riot. Big arm of the government coming for free speech. I had seen that headline, but I didn't get a chance to look into it yet. But I have to really wonder where this stemmed from. If you saw on Liberty Minute the other day, I mentioned Hillary Clinton apparently has a podcast now. I didn't even know that was a thing, but she has a podcast. And she had Nancy Pelosi on it recently, and the two of them sat there and cackled and talked about how there needed to be a new commission or task force to investigate whether or not Russia was the true force behind the Capitol riot. And of course, big media is blaming Parler, and Facebook has been blaming Parler, and Twitter and all of these people, but now it's coming out, and I think I mentioned this on Tuesday. It's actually coming out now that most of the planning of the siege on the Capitol happened on Facebook and through Facebook Messenger and Facebook groups, and Parler had nothing to do with it. And no one can actually point to any of these messages or posts on Parler that supposedly incited all of this. They just claimed that it exists and that it was there. But I did hear that FBI was going to be looking into it. Parler is actually suing Amazon as well. And I mean, they might have a decent argument because they are suing over breach of contract, because apparently in the contract that they signed with Amazon, it said that any party could terminate services, but it would require a 30-day notice. And Amazon gave Parler, 36 hours tops before completely nuking them, which, number one, is not enough time to jump through the hoops that Amazon wanted them to jump through. And number two, goes against their contract. It is a breach of contract. So it'll be really interesting to see where that goes. It'll be interesting to see then if the courts uphold contract law and do uphold the legal precedent that it is a breach of contract, or if they just go to like appease the left. So that'll be really interesting to see how that all plays out. Kbold41, thank you for the donation. Anthony Saravello says, Play School should make a Biden scratch and sniff book. Oh, no. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. Robert Chappelle says, Happy Friday. What did I miss? Well, what you missed is that I was actually organized today and had my links ready, and that I might see if I can chop any of that into smaller segments to post later. We'll see. People always want me to add chapters and things like that, but that takes a lot of time and a lot of work. Dale Snyder says, trip over more words. Okay, I'm not really sure if that's like an insult. I mean, if it is, like, that's kind of rude, but okay. I guess thanks for the $5 to say that. Robert Chappelle says that 18% of Republicans don't trust the press, but that's okay. 89% of Democrats do trust the press. That's a 101% approval rating brought to you by the Chicago Board of Electors. Though I just realized Dale might be saying that Biden can trip over more words. I don't know. We'll see. Let's see. Pickle Jars for Hillary says, salute the Marines, joke bidet. I didn't see the clip of him saying that, but I heard that as he walked by the Marines, he said, salute the Marines. And there's speculation it's because he had an earpiece telling him what to do. I mean, I guess it depends on the tone that he used while saying it. I don't know, man. Tiberius Kirk says, almost funny how the Dems went from anti-federalist to federalist. It's been, I'd like to say that it's a total 180, but I mean, for me, it's pretty predictable. And I mean, I don't know if that is just my cynicism for politics in being a libertarian, that I just think so much of it is theater and pop and circumstance. Or, I don't know, I guess their hypocrisy doesn't really surprise me that much anymore. And it might just be because I am so steeped in this. I mean, this is what I do. Like, anytime that I have a free moment, I'm like scrolling through Feedly, reading the news. Maybe that has made me bitter and cynical. I don't know. Omega says, Democrats, we will have no unity with Trumpers until we have power. Also, Democrats, now is the time for unity. Sure, let's cure the division you caused. People eat up this ruse. And I am seeing, like, trending on Twitter today was several different stories about how people are like, oh, sure, yes, we can have Biden unity, but we need to have accountability first. And that anyone who voted for Trump needs to be held accountable for their choices. I don't even know why someone's vote is really anyone's business or a public business. And I never really understood. There are places that I've lived in before, like towns and cities, that published the voter rolls so that you could just like put in someone's name and search them and find what party they were registered to. I don't really know what the deal is with that. It's pretty creepy. But you can't, on the one hand, say that we need to be above political parties and unify the country to avoid this quote-unquote uncivil war, which we are barreling towards faster and faster. You can't say that on one hand and then yet on the other hand say that Trump supporters and Republicans and conservatives and apparently even libertarians need to be held accountable for what? These people, I mean, in any situation, both parties, and I mean that in like, if like two people, there's a conflict or something, not in like Republican and Democrat, but in any conflict, both parties play a role. I'm not saying that both parties are purely at fault, but you know, they interact with each other in the situation. Democrats and Republicans, at least I'll say the establishment Democrats and Republicans, both played a role in this situation. You can't say, though, that anyone who voted for Trump, like Billy Joe Bob down the street with his rusty pickup truck, like he is not responsible for this political climate that we have right now. He's just an average person who voted in his best interest. Maybe he's a rural farmer and, you know, he liked some of Trump's policies about bringing manufacturing back to the country or something like that, because maybe he was a metal worker. You can't blame that, you know, Billy Joe Bob rando for the political climate in this country and then have this language about needing to hold him accountable for his sins and making sure that these people never get jobs and get canceled and have their names dragged through the streets. That's not very unifying speech. Superboss Giovanni says, did you see the email I sent you about the guy that went on an unhinged rant about libertarians? I did start to check it out. I haven't finished yet. Jesse Meek says, I watched the bravest woman I've ever known outlive 2 husbands and fight cancer 3 separate times over 18 years before succumbing. Can we remove this cancer, or has it gotten to the point a republic can no longer survive? Well, I mean, that's an interesting question. I am not a psychic. I can't see the future. I don't see a way that this could get ramped down in any healthy or helpful way. I was listening to a podcast recently that had this fellow on it who runs this service or ranch or something that is constantly evaluating the political situation and reporting on the likelihood that it will devolve into some apocalyptic crisis. And when he was on this podcast, he had it at only about 5%. 5% is 1 in 20 when you think about it. So shouldn't say only 5%, but I mean, his calculation was based on how likely is it that the world is going, or civilization as we know it is going to end tomorrow. It's not next week, next month, next year, but the amount of Americans who think that some sort of civil war or something is coming is steadily rising by the day, number one. And number two, we also had that article that came out on BuzzFeed, and I know it's BuzzFeed, but I reported on it a month or 2 ago, where they interviewed a couple of social scientists who were also had studied history and came up with this algorithm or whatever, looking at different things that were happening in the social and political climate, and they were able to predict civil war or some massive political crisis, instability, whatever, within a period of about 2 years. You know, their standard deviation there was 2 years. And they said that America is on its way. So who really knows? John Morgan, yes, he was on Timcast the other day. No one can say for certain. I'm a little freaked out and it doesn't look great. I'll say that much. Gardner says that Brennan refers to fascists in other countries like the ones the CIA worked with in Ukraine, members of which Biden met. Good job, LD. Don't let people forget this. Thank you. Well, exactly. That's exactly what I was saying, that the CIA has been involved in a lot of these areas where there was civil unrest. They funded the rebels in some situations, the governments in other situations, and it's been used as a political tool for American gain, quite frankly. Omega says that Democrat P was founded on oligarchy principle. Bruce says, by including libertarians in with insurgents, they've declared that anyone who doesn't align with the left talking points are a singular threat. Exactly. So at this point, it's anyone who just doesn't agree with the federal government. And it doesn't have to be the federal government as a whole. Anyone who just doesn't agree with, say, taxation or any government policy that we could pick up. Well, okay. So then that means that because this person disagrees with this one government policy, they could possibly be seen as an insurgent, and what, they're going to get a knock on their door from the alphabet boys? That seems like a really bad idea. And the thing is, too, they say that gun owners are a problem, and I am sure they're going to be coming for gun owners in this administration. But they know that they can't just knock on a gun owner's door and, you know, arrest them that way, because that's pretty dangerous, man. Like, that's a good way to get shot, right? That's a good way to get all of the other gun owners to rally around this cause. So they have to do it in some way with, like, you know, surveillance or black sites or what have you. It has to go through a really secretive and nefarious process to really, quote unquote, root these people out. And I mean, some people might say that, you know, oh, well, black site, well, that would be a conspiracy theory. Well, but I mean, other governments that had very similar policies to what we have now and what Biden is proposing have done it. Black sites already exist in the United States for citizens and for terrorists. They have them in New York. There's one in Chicago. This is not outside the realm of possibility. Gardner says that last I knew, libertarians weren't responsible for drone killing thousands overseas. Brennan is demonizing to set up threats against libertarians and old school conservatives. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Matt Barrett, thank you. Black Wolf 300 says, since we are now considered terrorists, when are we supplied guns and ammo from the CIA? Right? I mean, that whole thing, like, first we were against Al-Qaeda, and then we were arming them, and I believe actually we were arming them first and working with them first. And then we were against them, and now we're working with them again, or we were, but now we're probably going to be against them again because, like, oh, wow, surprise, Biden gets into office, and now all of a sudden there's bombings happening in Baghdad again for the first time in 3 years, and he's already talking about stopping Trump's withdrawal of troops and, like, putting them all back in. So, oh, cool, we're going to be sending people to the Middle East again. You know, because there's never any blowback there. That's just going to go swimmingly. Matthew Beverly says, watch out, David Hogg just perked up now that someone actually remembered him again. Oh, I'm sure he's going to be trying to do something to get another 15 minutes of fame pretty soon. And Hal says, for your house fund. Thank you very, very much. Hopefully the sellers fix everything that we asked them to. Let's see. Rose says, Diablo Immortal teased Diablo 4 at BlitzCon that a China company co-produced for China market mobile only Diablo game announced in front of a PC audience, then insulted audience with comment, do you guys not have phones? Oh, man. Okay, so that's what it was. I mean, that kind of feels like, well, I mean, on a much more extreme level, but you know how when Bethesda announced that Fallout 76 was going to be like an online MMO, but without NPCs anywhere, and everyone was like, what the hell? They were not happy. People still aren't happy. Mr. Robopilot says, Biden removed all military flags from Oval Office just so the Space Force flag would never be seen behind him. I didn't hear that, but I heard that he took, whose bust was it that he took down? He took down someone's bust and put up one of, instead, this Latino guy who had really pushed for unions, but was also like really anti-immigration, which is pretty ironic. David McCoy says, I love the talk about re-education camps from the left, because I mean, that's exactly what you want to do to reprogram and dismantle conspiracy theorists, is prove their conspiracy theories correct. That's absolutely going to get the job done. Prism, thank you. Daryl Coda says that your vote is a secret vote. Well, I mean, I thought it was supposed to be, but apparently not. If we're going to be having these truth and reconciliation committees for Trump voters. I guess I should be happy that I didn't, that South Carolina didn't register me in time to vote, so I couldn't vote in this election. It's probably a good thing. Means maybe I won't be on the list. Because last time I voted for Gary Johnson, as Aleppo as he was. Armament and Axes says, stolen election, #2A strong. Careful, that kind of talk can get you banned off of the YouTubes. Winston Churchill, thank you. Yes, that's who he took down and put in Cesar Chavez. David McCoy says the bust was taken down. It was too old. CHZZYG 269, there's probably a way to pronounce that. So says, so is political affiliation going to be on all background checks and military applications from now on? That's an interesting question. That's a really interesting question. I don't know. Maybe we can get someone, I'd say maybe we can get a deep plant to tell us, but you know, if they're rooting those people out, they'll probably get found. Q says that I probably voted and it just wasn't me. Carmageddon says, and #not my potato. Draxus, Storm Shadow says that apparently my dad voted. He died in 2004. Oh my goodness. I know there was a few people on here in the chats after the election that said that they went down to vote and were told that they had already voted. I mean, how do you even, like, what do you do about that? Who do you complain to about that? Like, how does that get investigated? Oh, well, I mean, I guess nothing was investigated this time around, but like in a non-Biden Trump election, how does one resolve that? Can you resolve that? It's interesting. Let's see. So it is just about 8:30. So I believe I got the I believe that David McCoy was the last super chat in. So Gamma Rain says that zombies are voting. Drevik says, Liberty Doll, just found you yesterday on YouTube, submitted a group request on MeWe. Not if I answered your questions properly. So I actually don't admin the MeWe group. It is Christoph that does that, I believe. He might just not have gotten to it yet. And part of the reason that I don't admin that yet is because I have a MeWe account, but it's a personal account. And so I'm waiting. I had taken my last name off of it after I got doxxed. And now I am waiting for the time limit to be up so I can change my screen name on it again so that it's not a personal account anymore. The group that's on Facebook is strictly for folks that are on Patreon or Subscribestar. It's one of the perks that they get. But the MeWe group is open to everyone. And I believe we're working on a new Discord server because I'm not a computer programmer and I set up the last one. And I guess it's not great. But there's going to be a Discord server as well. So we are going to have different ways that folks can keep in touch with each other. Also, on the bottom of every video description, I do have all of my alt tech platforms except for Parler, because Parler's been nuked, and Gab, because I can't seem to get back into it. But mine's is on there. I recently just started a Rumble, Library, Odyssey, Gunstreamer, Full 30, but only the 2A videos go over to Full 30. There's a few on there, so you guys can check it out. Oh, Cap'n Mac says if that's Janet, I just approved her on MeWe. Okay, I guess it's Cap'n Mac that's moderating and adminning it. I don't even know who's adminning my own group. That's pretty awful. But anyways, so that's the dealio with that. It is 8:30, so it is time to wrap it up. Dale Snyder wants me to wear more purple lipstick. I don't have purple lipstick, but okay. All right, so I will have at least one video for you guys this weekend. I have a couple that I'm working on and editing right now, and I will see you guys on Tuesday for the usual 9 p.m. text in whatever we're doing with it live stream. So thanks everyone for tuning in. Hit the like button. Thanks for the super chats and everyone in the chat. I know I didn't read as much of the chat today as usual, but was trying to really get the streamlined news out there. So everyone have a good and safe weekend, and I will see you guys next week. Good night.